Am I okay to whenever you're ready. Okay. Right, good afternoon. My name's Linda Roberts. I've been asked to come here today to actually talk to you about developmental psychology, and I think you've got a few other people as well telling you about developmental psychology, so you'll probably be quite experienced about it by the end of the day. When I run sessions, I usually I like to get to know people a little bit, because I'm not the kind of person who just likes to stand up and talk at people. So we usually do icebreakers. But as my sessions are usually 2 hours long and this is 15 minutes, we haven't really got time for doing that
15 to 20,
today.
if that helps.
It's okay, yes, okay, yeah. So I thought one thing I often do is get people to tell me if they could say that they're a certain animal, what animal they would be. And often we have some very interesting debates which come from this. I'm this animal, this is why, this is the characteristics. So I suppose I'll give myself the short straw and say that I'll tell you what animal I see myself as. And I see myself as a cat. Any ideas why people see themselves as a cat?
Because they just want to lay down and do nothing all day.
Okay.
Independent.
Independent?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're the cutest animals I know.
They are, exactly. Which is probably why my password, well, I won't tell my password is, but cute cats. Okay, so I always say I see myself as a cat because yes, like most people, I love eating, I love sleeping, but however, when I want to achieve something, I am really motivated. I see what I want and I go for it, and I go to whatever kind of effort to actually get there. I suppose also I would describe myself when I was younger as having good sporting innate abilities, which I think is a term we're going to pick up on later on. But however, that's something which over time life and the environment has sort of taken away from me. So perhaps as a cat is good at sprinting, I was perhaps born that way, but over time it sort of slipped away. Okay. Right, in terms of my session today. Okay, we've got my slide. Okay. Really, I just wanted to be able to help you to gain an understanding of what developmental psychology is and its role in the nature versus nurture debate. And I suppose I just wanted to open up that debate a little bit in terms of, is that something you're familiar with?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you know about it?
Nothing. I don't.
Oh, Nature, isn't that the argument about whether your environment predicts how you turn out, or whether how you turn out is to do with generics and things like that?
Yeah, that's it. That's the big debate which has been happening, I think, since the day dot, really. But over years it has developed much further. So in terms of the objectives of this session, I suppose my dilemma was, it's a short session, try not to cram too much in, but put enough in the session so that you actually gain something from it. So really, I suppose I'd be quite happy if you walk away being familiar with some of the developmental psychology's major theorists, such as Piaget and Kohlberg. Anybody heard of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. And also experience some activities relating to stages of development. Okay, so as I said, I don't like just standing up and talking at people. Okay, I just noticed I've missed something here, apologies about that. Okay, so a definition from Carlson et al., made in 2004, is that developmental psychology study both the similarities and the differences among people as they develop and change over the course of their life. So it's not a case of you are born this way, that's the way you're going to stay. It's very much a case of we develop, we change as we go along. And I think we see that ourselves, don't we? So at some point in our lives we can see ourselves in a certain light, yet then we make other decisions, other choices, and we realise perhaps we've got other potential in other ways, and life changes as we go along. And in terms of developmental psychology, it's what is interesting to me, not just the theories, but really the importance they have in everyday life. Because you can write theories until the cows come home, all very interesting, but what does it mean? How can we use those theories? So really, developmental psychologists have used a lot of their theories, or their theories have been used a lot in education, health, and really sort of in society in general to explain things. Okay, so I should have actually asked the question before I put this on. What do you think are some of the issues then in developmental psychology?
Is it due more to genetics and environment?
Yeah. Yeah. Spot on.
You're clever.
Okay, so we'll just read it. Okay, so does development occur slowly and smoothly, or do changes happen in stages? So some theorists are very stage orientated. Things happen in this stage and you don't always move on to the next stage. And stages need to happen at certain ages. So those stages are quite rigid. But other theorists are very much take the approach of the development changes a lot over time. And the stages aren't set, it depends upon the individual in terms of how quickly they work through those stages. I suppose the last thing, do early childhood experiences have the greatest impact on development, or later events equally important? What do you think from what you've studied so far?
Equally as important.
Pardon?
Equally as important.
Equally as important?
I've got an argument about that.
Yeah?
Because I see it as both biological and environmental. Because, obviously you can have somebody with genetical problems and they're not able to have that learning and that development, so that they lack that. But it's not like Freud's theory.
Yeah.
But
It's very set, isn't it? So basically,
yeah,
if you haven't reached a certain stage by the age of 5, it's
yeah.
like you've had it, haven't you? So
Exactly.
it's very set, isn't it? Yeah.
Whereas I don't see it as that. I see it as more biological, like as in if you've got problems with pregnancy or whatever, you've got a child who comes into the world and they've got problems, so therefore society has to adapt to them and they have to adapt with it as well. So
Yeah.
it's like two different conflicts in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And quite individual, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do other people think? Your thoughts?
I think it's spot on. The stages,
Do you?
they're like, if you miss a stage, it can be quite crucial to your development.
Yeah. I mean, do you think you can actually not achieve one stage and then go on to the next stage?
I think you can, yeah, but you need to really achieve them both.
Yeah? Okay. Right, so most theories of development fall under 3 broad areas. Well, that's my understanding. Psychoanalytic theory, so that's Freud, who you've all studied, I believe, already, and Erikson. Erikson? Yeah? Familiar with Erikson? Yeah? So basically with Erikson, the way I see it, he's not as set in his ways. He very much looks at somebody developing throughout their life, but it's based upon a lot of Freudian thought. So learning theories, behaviourism, that's something else you've done already?
Yeah.
So, and that's quite set, isn't it? Yeah, what do you think about behaviourism?
Rigid. Too rigid.
Too rigid, yeah.
But there's a lot of behaviourism that gets used nowadays in things that, like the way we taught and things like that. So a lot of the theories still get used, which make them valid.
Yeah, it's true, you can condition things to be how you want them to be.
I think these days psychologists think that the different theories interact with each other. So rather than just saying that this theory is what happens, this theory is the way to go, they very much take the approach of it's looking at all the different theories and looking at how they actually work together. So it's not a case of one is the one which is the best theory, but how do they interact? And then cognitive theories such as Piaget's stages of development, which I think may be new to you. Yeah, okay. That's what I was hoping you would say, because that's what I'm picking up on.
Ah, so we're actually learning something today. Trick.
See, my problem was not knowing you guys. I was like, what have they learned, what have they covered? Okay, if you'd said no, I don't know anything about Erik Erikson, then I've got a slide to say this is Erikson. But, as we do, we should go on to Piaget. And Piaget wrote the theory of cognitive development. And many people refer to Piaget as the father of developmental psychology. And I think Piaget is very well known for studying children. So he didn't actually study people's whole lives. He very much studied them at a certain age and looked at developmental stages within children. And what I've got here, which actually would probably be quite useful to have a look at while we work through the slide, is a handout, some information about Piaget which you can take away with you.
Is there any particular experiments that he did that you might know?
Well, I'm going to show you a couple in a minute, which is why I've got little text on the side. Okay, so he proposes discrete stages of development marked by qualitative differences. And I suppose the discrete stages means that he understood that people don't go through the stages at the same time. So there are indicators in terms of what time people would go through. But however, he very much recognised that people achieve different stages at different times. So his theory, I suppose the important things to think about are schemas, process, and his 4 stages of development. So if you want to look to your sheet, the 4 stages of, we'll start off with the schemas. So you need to be aware of what that means, and that's really knowledge. It's the building blocks of your knowledge. Process is assimilation. Use existing schema to deal with new object or situation. Accommodation, existing knowledge doesn't work, it needs to be changed to deal with new knowledge, situations. And then equilibrium, and this is really the force for change. And force that drives the learning process. Seeks to restore equilibrium by mastering a new challenge. So he thought those things were important in terms of actually developing. And then when you get to the 4 stages of development, the schema and the process actually comes into play. So as you can see here, the sensory motor stage of cognitive development is birth to 2 years. Now, I don't know whether you've seen anything like this before. Okay, so in this stage, you know what I'm going to do?
I'm saying it's like Father Christmas.
Okay, so say I've got a child sitting here in a high chair. Now I'm playing with the child. This is actually my 11-year-old son's, but we'll put that to one side. So I'm actually playing with this. Now a child under the age of 1, pop it in there, my nice little Santa sack, and they would think it's completely disappeared. It's completely gone, it's not anywhere to be seen. Okay. Now, a child over the age of 1, and as we're saying, we're not saying strictly when you get to 12 months, this is what happens, because it's a guideline. But with that child, it's gone, and they don't sit there and start doing something else. They're trying to follow it. Where's it gone? They'll be looking for it. Is it in there? Is it in there? Let me have a look. So, you know, in that first stage, there's development taking place. Now the second stage, which is the pre-operational stage, and that's 2 to 6 year olds, they think about things in concrete terms. And if you have much experience of children in the terrible 2s and upwards, you do realise that they can be quite egocentric in terms of this is the way I want it to be, this is the way I'm going to do it, not necessarily seeing what else is happening around them. And the other thing that's happening at that point is they're learning to use symbolism. They're learning to use language and pictures. Now, with that age range, obviously they'll know that this is in the cup, generally. But however, if I sometimes the sheet, actually, if I move the glass out of the way. However, there are other things which they may struggle to understand. Now, what I'm going to do, fill both these glasses. These glasses hold 200 ml. Now, have we got equal amount in there?
No.
No.
No?
Sorry,
Just
on
somebody
the
want to come in?
eyeliner,
Just so you know, I'm not
Pretend they
checking
are.
you. Do you want to check the equal amount?
Yeah, on the that one nearest to you.
This one needs a little bit more.
This needs a drop more. This is exactly what children do.
Yeah.
It's actually mine.
That one.
It don't matter, we'll just pretend that they're
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with pretending.
yeah.
Right, so
That's you can do.
these two glasses got equal amount in. Yeah? Everybody see?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if I pour this into the tall glass, is there still an equal amount in both glasses?
Yes.
One me now.
Okay. Now we know that because we've reached a stage of thinking where we can actually think abstractly and we can analyse. Now, a child in the pre-operational stage, mostly they would say there's more in this one because it's taller, it's bigger. Okay, so they can't at that point actually look at things in the way which you actually look at them, because they look at it in terms of size, don't look at it in terms of the amount of liquid that has been measured out. Okay, so that's just trying to sort of demonstrate a little bit about the different stages and what happens. Okay, the concrete operational stage, and I'm sorry I couldn't find anything to demonstrate that either. You begin to think logically about concrete events. Thinking becomes more organised, well, for most anyway. See my son's bedroom, definitely not there. Begin to reason from specific information to a general principle. Okay. And then the last stage is the formal operational stage, the 12 plus. And then this is quite a different stage in terms of our understanding and the things which we can actually start thinking and discussing. So we can actually think very abstractly about information. We can use some knowledge and then we can apply it in a much broader and wider sense. We start to think in the following ways. So how we view things in a moral way has an impact. Philosophical, ethical, social and political. So all those different factors start coming into play because we actually reason with those different factors. Okay. Any questions on that? That's just a brief synopsis because we're sort of brief in time. Okay. Anyone heard of Kohlberg?
No.
No?
So, I'm writing this down.
Kohlberg very much did a lot of... Okay, so you're writing everything.
Bonus. I love it. I'm learning something new. I like it.
Okay, so Kohlberg very much built upon Piaget's studies, but he came up with his own theory, and he focused very much on moral development and how that has an impact on us. He saw moral development as a continual process that occurs throughout the lifespan. So whereas Piaget very much concentrated on studying children, Kohlberg very much looked at everybody's entirety, their whole lives. And as you'll see from your sheet, he said there were 3 levels and 6 stages within those levels. So, stage 1, obedience and punishment. So that is very clear-cut, isn't it? It's almost a bit sort of behaviourism in terms of cause and effect, isn't it? In terms of, if you don't do this, this will be the punishment. So it's very clear. They don't think anywhere around it. Individualism and exchange. So this starts accounting for individuals' point of view. Conventional morality, interpersonal relationships. This is where there's an emphasis on conformity. So to do the right thing, to fit in, you conform. Stage 4 is maintaining social order. And you begin to consider society, what else is happening around me. The focus is on maintaining law and order by following the rules, doing one's duty and respecting authority. And I think, if you think of these various stages, you perhaps can think of various people and perhaps how they fit into various stages, children and adults. The level 3 is post-conventional morality. That's when people start thinking about their individual rights. So they don't just accept that this is right, this is wrong, I have to do what I have to do because society says so. It starts questioning, why am I doing this? Okay, it isn't right for me. So you get different groups of people, different sectors of people saying, well, it isn't right because, so I'm not going to accept that. And then universal principles. Kohlberg's final level of moral reasoning is based upon universal ethical principles and abstract reasoning. At this stage, people follow these internalised principles of justice, and I think that's it, the internalised. And I think as you get older, you do develop that internal morality much more as you go along through life experience.
Sorry, you go first.
I was going to say, has he based that basically around the ego and the superego? Because that's almost what it sounds.
No. I think he based it upon Piaget's theory of development in terms of we actually develop as we go along. And he's not saying that this is reached within any set timescale. It's actually, it's sort of saying at your own time that goes through.
I've got an against about him. I mean, values and principles, even though they come from the law, you can still have your parents influence you.
Yeah.
So there's a sort of like a tipped debate on that, because I mean, you could have one parent that might not have seen that or might not have gone through that stage of thought or pattern.
Yeah.
So does that affect the child's morality and thoughts and patterns as well?
Well, I think it can have an impact because we're influenced by our parents and influenced by what's going on around us.
Okay.
But I think over time as well, it's not just parents. From your own experiences, you start gathering your own thoughts and beliefs and then start internalising.
So it's both society as well as your influence of your parents.
Yes,
as well
well,
as
I would say it is. Yeah. And I'd say that fits in with this, and very much the principle that we change as we go along. We can be working through these stages, but in different circumstances, we may apply a different level of morality. So sometimes we may not completely agree with something, but we go along with it 'cause it's easiest. It's not worth actually arguing about it, making a fuss, it's just easiest to go along with it. So it's very much thinking about how these different levels, I suppose, and stages impact upon daily life and the way we deal with things. Okay, so also you'll see that Kohlberg did a lot of his research on children, very similar to Piaget. And what he did, if I can actually find what I'm looking for. This is the point it all goes drastically wrong. Okay. Kohlberg is well known for something called the Heinz dilemma. And what he did was he presented this dilemma to children, and he was very interested in how they reacted to the dilemma. So he wasn't necessarily he wasn't really focusing on whether they thought things were right or wrong. He was focusing on how they actually got to their conclusion. So I'll just read this through. So Kohlberg based his theory on research and interviews with groups of young children. A series of moral dilemmas were presented to these participants, and they were also interviewed to determine the reasoning behind their judgments of each scenario. The following is one example of the dilemmas Kohlberg presented. So, Heinz steals the drug. And as I'm reading it through, you can think about yourself and how you view this situation. So in Europe, a woman was near death from a special kind of cancer. There was one drug that the doctors thought might save her. It was a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The drug was expensive to make, but the druggist was charging 10 times what the drug cost him to make. He paid $200 for the radium and charged $2,000 for a small dose of the drug. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money. We could only get together about $1,000, which is half of what it cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay later. But the druggist said, "No, I discovered the drug and I'm going to make money from it." So Heinz got desperate and broke into the man's store to steal the drug for his wife. So the question which Kohlberg actually asked the children was, should the husband have done that? So Kohlberg wasn't interested in the answer, the yes or no. He was interested in the child's understanding and their argument in terms of why they felt it's okay that he did it or that he shouldn't have done it. And you can apply that to the different levels of understanding. So if we had to do a show of hands in the room, who would say it's acceptable to do it? Okay, yeah, that's it. It very much depends upon what angle you're coming from, doesn't it? And as I say, you can work through different stages. And if you're at the stage of you shouldn't do anything which is against the law or against society, then you would say no, it's completely wrong. Whereas if perhaps you're at the stage of very much looking at your own internalised principles of what's right and wrong, then you might be feeling, well actually yes, it is actually acceptable to do that, even though I know it's wrong, to actually break into a building and steal something. Any questions on that? I think I need to whiz. I'm nearly at the end. Okay, so really, by coming to talk to you today, I wanted you to understand what developmental psychology is, have a taster in terms of what it is, think through issues in developmental psychology, and the roles of Piaget and Kohlberg in developmental psychology. So Piaget very much did his research just on children, and he discovered developmental stages with children, whereas Kohlberg very much looked at somebody throughout their lives. So very much looked at that development process throughout their lives. And I suppose the question I'd like you to start considering from today is, what role does developmental psychology play in education and everyday life? Because as I started off by saying, for me personally, yes, it's great to have theories, it's great to develop those theories, but it's why are we doing that? How does that help us in everyday life? How does that help us in education, the development of children, milestones, health, all those kinds of areas? Because that's really why we gain an understanding of those things. And last, have I got to the next one? Okay. Yeah, as it's the Friday before Christmas. If you're anything like me, I'm struggling to keep my mind off Christmas. I thought I should tell you a very bad joke, and it's the only psychologist joke I could actually find. But I thought it was okay-ish. So what do psychologists say to each other when they meet? You're fine, how am I? So starting to study psychology, I think you sort of understand where that's coming from.
That's good.
Yeah.
Like it.
Right, thank you for listening. And hopefully in sessions to come you'll be picking up more on what I've started telling you about developmental psychology and how it fits in with other kinds of psychology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Christmas.
Thank you. I was going to wear my hat, but no.